Peace and love, YouTube family. How is everyone doing? My name is Lily Lapoete Speaks, BKA and Lima Njai. Thank you all for joining us on another edition of RAM, Resurgence of the African Mind, where we seek to liberate African minds by reading one unit of work at a time. Of course, family, you all know that we are reading Powernomics, the National Plan to Empower Black America by Dr. Claud Anderson. Last week, we read Chapter 3, The Building of Competitive Communities. This week, we're kicking off with Chapter 4, Reconstructing Schools for Group Competitiveness. If you guys head over to Lily Lapoete Speaks, I'm going to start putting the links, you guys, for the chapters. And so if you want to get caught up, just head on over there maybe in a couple hours, and then that'll be updated for you because I see people looking for it every day through the RAM. So I'm assuming that's what they're looking for. But thank you guys for joining us. We're going to let Dr. Maat introduce herself, and then we're going to kick it off with Chapter 4.
Peace and love, family. This is your sister, Dr. Maat. Happy to be on the panel, man. I'm looking forward to discussing Chapter 4, Restructuring Schools for Group Competitiveness. And Queen, you know this is right up my alley. For those who don't know, I teach over at Morgan State University, and I love it. Teaching is my passion. And so I'm definitely all about restructuring our schools, you know, for group competitiveness, because we got to condition our babies to be able to compete, Sister Elaine, and to be able to be the people that we need for them to be in order to advance. And that should be really the goal of education. I know that Dr. Amos Wilson, in one of his speeches, he talked about like the function of education. And he said that the function of education should be to ensure our biological survival and to ensure that we are prosperous. And so that should be the whole function of education. So anyway, I'm looking forward to this discussion. I'm getting ready, Queen, to post this link on Facebook to give some folks some time to get on in here.
All right.
Yeah, to get on in here. So let me throw this up.
Hopefully the daylight saving time didn't trip everybody up too much, because it definitely tripped me up. I feel like I need a cup of coffee right now.
I know. So, yep. What is it? Fall back, spring forward. So we lost an hour, right?
Yes, we did. I didn't even go to
man.
bed until 3 o'clock because I thought it was 2 o'clock. And then there's something I looked up. It was like 3. I was like, oh no. Got caught up.
We are live discussing. I'm looking forward to those chapters, though, Queen, getting up on your website, Lily Lapoete Speaks. I know we had it for Blueprint. Did we put any chapters up for any other books, Falsification of Africa?
3 of them. So basically the last 3, I believe. I feel like all the ones we read are up there, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, cool. Beautiful. So we are live discussing Chapter 4, Powernomics by Dr. Claud Anderson. Link. Join the panel. I wish that Zoom would just give us all of this stuff, or at least YouTube would give us this stuff ahead of going live, but you know, it is what it is. It is what it is.
You know, this chapter reminded me of course, as we've already stated, very much so, certain things that we read in Blueprint for Black Power. Probably just not as in depth, but it was similar.
Very similar. Yeah, very similar. And we'll definitely get into that. Just a little bit, Queen. We'll get into that. Okay, click this link to join, to participate via YouTube. All right, Queen, I think I'm ready.
All right.
I'm getting ready to post this, and then we can rock and roll. We're allowed to discuss Chapter 4 Economics. All right, so family, please share this discussion. I actually just posted both links on my Facebook page, The Anna Bailey. So you can go there if you need both links. But please share the discussion, family. Again, you know, I want to get these these views up. I think that Sister Alima and I do a wonderful job bringing some good information to the community. And this information needs to get out. You know, Queen, if it was some controversial stuff going on, we would have, you know, 1 million folks in here. I know today I was watching, I got a notification that Sinetta went live to go in on Hassan Campbell. And I just clicked on the link, and when I clicked on it, I saw that he had an audience of 1,600 people watching him argue with the guy Hassan Campbell. And I was just thinking, wow, you know what I mean? We just look at the stuff that we entertain and give energy to, you know what I mean? And here we are talking about Powernomics, and you might have a few, you know, folks to tune in. It just kind of shows you where our priorities are and where our mindset is. But anyway, Brother Shimsu, peace and love, brother. I see you on the panel. Happy that you're here.
Peace, Queen. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, we hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Yeah, I was able to make it in. I thought we was meeting at 7. I'm sorry I missed us last week.
Oh, yeah. I had to change it because I had an engagement. And so I think either Saturday or Sunday, I hit up Sister Alima, and we changed the time. And just so we could keep on going, we didn't want to have to reschedule. So yeah, we end up doing it a little earlier and trying to, just trying to get this information out, King.
Gotcha.
Peace and love, Chaos.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about yourself?
I can't pronounce the name now. I'm not gonna say it.
I'm good, brother. How are you?
All right. Yes. Hey, it's kind of good that y'all got to start early. No, I don't mind 7:30 because it's always better for me, depending. But because so much has been going on YouTube that to get this out, you have to put out at a certain time where people will say it comes up in the algorithm, possibly. Especially like this. I'm just saying, but go ahead.
Mm-hmm. That's true to a certain extent, but then it just depends on who it is. That's what I've learned from YouTube. They say all that, but it just depends on who's posting.
Yeah, and the problem with YouTube coming here about the shadow ban and stuff, I don't believe it, but it depends on the content people put out. It's possible. So when things are like educational, it is what it is. I mean, I find the struggles throughout the whole year doing this, and I say, yeah, the people that does this, I mean, I can see why people do certain things, what they do, because the Negro mind is very fascinating today. I mean, you try to think that people will be balanced and say, okay, you could take some fuckery sometime, but also spend more time on this too, a little bit more on this, Because the world's crazy, and I understand we need, but you can't indulge in too much of this unless that's not gonna cut it.
That's true.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I agree with you because I ain't gonna lie, I tune into some of the stuff too. I do. I like my gossip. I like my tea. Yeah. But like you said, I mean, you gotta have a balance, man.
Yeah.
You gotta have a balance. So go ahead, Sister Lynn. Go ahead and kick it off. I'm posting this in different groups, but go ahead and kick it off. Or do you want me to kick it off?
Reconstructing schools for group competitiveness. So he kicks it off, and he's saying that Black schools must empower Black children by functioning as extensions of the family, teaching realities of life, dispensing knowledge, and honing skills, which of course we know is important. Schools have yet to perform these tasks, though. Changing Black schools into what they should be will require major reconstructing. He says reconstructing Black schools will require more than just tinkering with some programs. Our programs to produce children who are appropriately trained to implement the Powernomics plans. Okay. He says that schools must design a solution to the problems. So most schools are not, of course, the schools that our children are in now aren't even geared towards their success. And he's saying once we reconstructed these schools, they must offer solutions and not just Band-Aids. Black schools that prepare Black children to compete in the economy. White society has a monopoly of control over the power of schools, which is currently where we are today, and why we are discussing reconstruction. So if we move on to page 90, he kicks it off, Black America and its schools. And I like this quote from Dr. Carter G. Woodson. And he says that Blacks are the only group of people who take their most precious possessions, their children, and ask their oppressors to educate them and mold them to shape their minds.
And Queen, I use that quote a whole lot, in addition to the quote by Malcolm X, where he says, only a fool will allow his enemy to educate his children. Both of those quotes to me, Queen, are very, very, Very powerful. And even on page 89 at the bottom, when he says that we as Black people must accept full responsibility for the quality of education of our for the quality of education our Black children receive.
But we refuse to do so.
Thank you. Thank you. We blame the school system and we say, oh, the school system, when our children come out, half of them are barely reading and half of them are barely this. But then what are you going to do about it?
What are you teaching them at home? I always say, where's your supplemental education? We
Right.
start to think that we need to supplement anything. School only teaches the children 10% of what they need to know. So if you're depending on that, you're leaving 90% of your kids to just figure it out in the world. Are you serious?
It's laziness, because they feel said, you know, if I send him to this white man, he's going to give him what's needed so that way he could survive, or he or she could survive. And as we know through the numbers and for the last couple of decades, we are actually so behind that we have regressed in the education system. Not just the boys, but the girls too. I don't care how good the girls are. We're both as, because one's doing bad, both are doing bad at the same time. Because you need a set of men for them just to get married.
Yes, talk about it.
So you tell me, all right, let's say the school system focus on the girls. Okay, let's say we have that. All right. So now the women get what they need as they come from pre-K to 12 and then college. Now they're in the workforce if they choose to work or service. Where are the suitable men they going to find, especially if they're power race, to hopefully to engage, you know, and marry and eventually procreate and, you know, sustain something? Because not everything's guaranteed with marriage, but just to give them the opportunity. Where is that at?
Yeah, you're saying basically, Brother Chaos, is that, you know, if we leave the men behind or if we leave the women behind, then, you know, we won't be producing people who are equally yoked.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And that's basically what you're saying. Where's, you know, if you that Black woman, if you focus solely on her, she gets educated, she goes out there and she gets a 6-figure job. Where's her counterpart? You know,
exactly.
Her counterpart, he didn't go to college. You know what I mean? Her counterpart may be making, you know, significantly less than she is. You get what I'm saying? So you're right. Where are you? How are we? Yeah, I agree 100%. I see where you're going.
He's in the NBA or the NFL.
And you know, it's funny. This is one of the major issues that a lot when you hear it, Doctor, and you hear the talk when if you run these circles enough women, you hear the complaints, right? Well, it's saying these boys these men start as boys. What I mean, we gotta think about who needs more attention now in this century now. If we really talking about we're gonna survive this, you know. And there's too many men, scholars wrote books on this. And we say, okay, so shouldn't we focus just a little bit more attention on the boys just so they can get up to a certain pace level at this point? I mean, I'm just saying. Go ahead.
Well, I think so too. I mean, the statistics say that 70% of the degrees in the Black community are being earned by Black women.
Exactly.
Yeah, so typically Black males do not go to college. That's why typically when you go on in HBCU campus, the ratio of women to men may be like 10-1, 8-1, 13-1 on a lot of our HBCU campuses.
It got to be more than that now, because when I was in school, Morris Brown was 20-1.
Oh my goodness.
20-1.
Jesus.
Yeah, I think at Howard, the ratio is like 13-1 at Howard University. That's what Isaiah shared with me.
And you know, I didn't want to get into the depth of the issues with college, but let's say for this conversation, most of us not either in it or not, that still there's a missing gap still, you know? So I can't really talk about, you know, the main problems when, you know, one thing, we as men, we're not even up to par, you know, with our counterparts. So when we hear the complaints, it is valid, but there has to be something that has remedy to solve the little problem of that, you know, at least. And we could do that as people, but if we're going to deal with the school, so we got to say, all right, most parents that it's either 2-parent or 1, what the parent has to focus on. So what are you going to do with these children that's here? You know, because now you have some work to do, you know? Just put them in the school system and hope to leave it to these people is no longer enough, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So moving on, he goes on to say that Black America must educate its children through community-based partnerships between students, teachers, parents, churches, and businesses. So he's saying that all of those entities or institutions and people should be involved in the education of Black children. I wholeheartedly agree. He also says that schools are communities in and of themselves that should be built upon a strong sense of community trust, cooperation, and group accountability. When teachers, children, and parents work together toward group goals, they naturally evolve into a community of interest that they control. So I agree 100% with that also. So the next section, he says, what does Black America need from its school? He starts by saying that any plan to empower Black America must have the involvement of Black schools to prepare the human and intellectual capital that we need to carry out the plan. Under the right circumstances, education can empower an individual or a group by conveying knowledge, skills, values, culture, and attitudes. And I like what he said when he said under the right circumstances. So we're quick to say knowledge is power, education is power, but what knowledge, what knowledge will empower us? What type of education will empower us? So I like that he used the words under the right circumstances, education can empower an individual or a group. Okay.
And I've dated women who didn't go to college, but they was well read. They came out of the conscious community, and they read a lot. You know, they were heavy readers, reading very serious pieces of material, and mine was well developed. So I don't necessarily think that you have to go to an institution to be well read.
Oh yeah.
So either, but what the key thing is, like you said, you can be well read, but what are you reading?
Right.
I know a lot of people that are very well read, but they read a lot of books about chakras and stuff. And I mean, they might be very knowledgeable on that subject, but what are those things doing to help you and help the Black community? So like, are you reading Carter G. Woodson?
Right.
Reading, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Something else, like.
You need
is it empowering you at the end of the day? Can you take this and empower not only your family, but power the collective around you?
Right.
I mean, these are the questions. I think Amos Wilson said these same questions too. You know,
if you become what if you became a tarot reader? I mean, or astrologer? You can.
No comment.
I know wealthy astrologers. I know wealthy astrologers. I know wealthy metaphysic teachers who have ministries in metaphysics, and they do quite well.
Well, metaphysics is not going to save the Black community. So
yeah,
in astrology isn't either.
That shit is self-serving.
That's why I didn't comment. I was like, okay, no comment. But yeah. So anyway, I love that he says at the bottom. I'm looking at the first. On page 91. I'm at the top paragraph, looking at the bottom sentence. He said the question is, how can schools that are underfunded and ill-equipped produce Black children that are competitive with white children? You can't because you don't have the resources, to do it. And he says that we need an education model that meets and serves the specific needs of Black children. That's a fact, because right now teachers, we already know that the public institutions, the public educational institutions were initially set up for white children. And so the pedagogy that they were using was for really white male children. And so we know that the teaching methods catered to the learning style of white children. And I know that now they're trying to get away from that because schools are, much more diverse. And you have, Black and brown kids there, Asian children, Hispanic children. So they're trying to get away from that. And they're trying to adopt like innovative teaching methods. And they're trying to.
That's why they brought in Common Core.
Yes.
Exactly.
So I know that I know they're trying to do that now. But I think that we definitely still need a model that meets the needs and serves the specific. meets and serves the specific
African mind.
Of the African mind.
I got a question for the two sisters on the podium right now. What is a developed sister? A developed mind, the ideal sister. When you're talking about education, you're talking about develop. What is she? I know you sisters is heavy. I know that. I'm talking about outside of you. what do you mean when you're saying that the system needs to be developed in other areas? Define that. What she should be about.
You said what? You repeat your question, Brother Shamsu.
Okay, we talked about a sister being well educated.
Right.
We talked about the sister reading the right material. What is the ideal sister? What you, in your definition, would define as a developed sister? I want y'all to define that.
I think a sister that is, when I say educated, because I mean, it's kind of what kind of education does she have? When I say,
it's broad, that word education.
Yeah, when you say well educated, just because you have a PhD, a master's degree, a bachelor's, to me, that doesn't mean you're well educated, right? But a sister that is, to me, operating with an African-centered worldview, that's first and foremost. To me, the ideal sister would be a sister that is African-centered. And that means a lot. I mean, this means that this woman is family-oriented. She's family-oriented. I'm sorry. She's family-oriented. She's educated. She takes care of her man. She takes care of her children. She takes care of her, you know what I mean? So to me, a sister like that, a sister that has goals, she wants to operate in the best interest of her family and her community and her people. That to me is a developed sister. I don't know whether I answered your question.
Yes, you did.
Okay,
that was a good definition.
Okay, all right, Sister Lima.
Yeah, I now figure your name now.
Hold on, brother Kayon.
Sister
Talking
Lima.
to the sisters, brother. Hold on, we're gonna give you a minute. Now, if you a sister, we got you wrong.
No. I just remember.
I mean, if one is funny, you can change it if you want. But I'm saying just 1 minute. I don't have much to add to that. That's probably in essence what I would have said in a nutshell. You know what I mean? Because basically what we were just talking about specifically, it just depends on what you're studying. Now, I'm not saying that you can't be studying or reading certain things that's not going to be fulfilling to the Black community as a whole, because we all have personal things that we enjoy. I'm just saying that should be at the core part of her values. That should be one of them, is African liberation. Because it starts with women. So
thank you.
Sure it does.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Like she said, it starts with women. You know, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing in ISIS paper, she said that the hand that rocks the cradle rules the nation.
you know how much respect and how quickly we could turn our brothers around in one generation just by us respecting ourselves.
Yes.
I think that the sisters don't understand how much power we have. And you know, and in Queen, when we say things like that, they say, oh, you want to put it all on the sisters, Dr. Maat. You know, you hard on the sisters. But like I said, I understand how powerful we are, Queen. And like you said, I know that we could turn them around if the sisters started moving a different way. You know, they just respond to, the brothers just respond to us. What am I trying to say, Queen? You know what I'm
on to the way that we behave.
Yes.
We run shit, but that we don't get that. Like if brothers are treating us like sluts overall, because that's how we're behaving.
Exactly.
When I was coming up in the 90s, a brother knew damn well who to approach as a slut and who not to. He would never approach just the average woman. But nowadays, the average woman is a slut. So, you know, but we have set that trend. We have done so. So we would have to be the ones to correct that. A man is not going to fix that at all. A man is going to be a man, period.
Yep.
We have to teach him how to treat us and how to respect us. It's really that simple.
And Ima, you just said drop a bomb. You know, a lot of women not going to like that. They think, what?
No, they're not. They're going to say, well, what about the men?
What about the men? It's always what about the men? Data for that. What about us?
Facts. Facts. But moving on, I thought that this paragraph, right before we get into a look at the traditional role of schools, I thought that this paragraph was powerful. And I just want to read it. I want to keep reading paragraphs, but I do want to read this one. He says, empowering Black children is more than teaching them math and reading skills. It is more than preparing them for the public sector jobs or high-ranking position in other people's businesses in other people's community. Because typically that's what we do. We send our children to school, what they say, reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? We send them to school to get those skills. And then we tell them after you get those skills, go get a good job, right? But Dr. Claud Anderson says they must know how to compete for wealth and power rather than poverty and acceptance, to produce rather than consume, and to be job producers rather than job seekers. For schools, preparing Black America to compete means removing the chains of inappropriate behavior and teaching them to see, think, and behave anew. The classroom education must be relevant to the real world outside of the school, and Black children should learn more in classrooms than they do on the streets. Black children need schools to teach them how to live a life and earn a living in an increasingly pluralistic and competitive world. Only when schools are able to perform these functions will they be able to close the learning gap between Blacks and whites and other ethnic groups. I thought that was very powerful.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 91. Yeah, the second paragraph.
I thought so too, Queen. I had it specifically highlighted. They must know how to compete for wealth and power.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's what I talk to my class. You know, I teach 4 classes over at Morgan. And so I ask a lot of them, well, what do you want to do when you get out? And a lot of them say, I want to get a job. And I want to get a job, doc. You know, they're paying us $75,000, $80,000 with a bachelor's. And I said to them, I said, you don't know your worth. I said, because they're paying you, if they're paying you $75,000 to $80,000 a year, which equates to maybe like $32 to $40 an hour, trust and believe they're making quadruple off of you. So, and I gave them an example. I said, so like if you were to go work for Northrop Grumman or Lockheed Martin, a lot of these are defense contractors. And so what they'll do is they might get a contract and they might be billing at $300 or $400 an hour, but they'll pay you $35 an hour or $40 an hour. So I was telling them that you need to know your worth when you get out there. So I call it pimping. Don't go out there and get pimped. Know your worth. If somebody's paying you $75K or $80K, your work is worth much more than that. You know what I mean? So I have these conversations with my students all the time. We need wealth, we need power. And the only way we can get that is by starting businesses and controlling industries. I was telling them we won't be able to get wealth and power if our mindset, if we continue to operate with an employee mindset. But
Absolutely.
So Queen, go ahead and summarize the next section.
All right. A look at the traditional role of schools. Okay, so he starts talking about Horace Mann, who is the architect of the common school system, and of course how he developed the institutions for whites. Move on to 92, he starts getting into that schools have not committed themselves to providing Black children a high quality and relevant education, which we all know. At best, Black children get 1 month of the school year to learn about the same Black people over and over and over and over. When we examine the educational accomplishment of Blacks, he says that from the 1860s to the 1960s, that's when we had some of the most astounding accomplishments. The interesting thing is that's actually also when we were very, very poor. So I find it interesting that.
Hello?
No. She went out for a little bit. Sister Lima?
Give her a second.
Yeah. She said she find it very interesting and she's getting ready to touch on a point too.
You know, it's interesting. She was about to go in regards to the time when we were poor, we create a lot of things. The only problem is we didn't really monopolize and control our intellect in these creations.
I don't even think it was just that. I think it was that we created a lot of things, but I think it was the integration that killed us. I'm not even gonna say I know. It is what it is. Okay. The social integration. Is she back, Sister Lima?
Yeah, I'm back. I had lost some service since I was downstairs.
Okay, it's cool. Go ahead and finish your thought, Queen.
Okay, I was just pretty much just summing it up. He starts to get into, he talks about the illiteracy rates and he talks about how the European immigrants and the Jews that basically they were illiterate as well when they came over here, but they never stopped them progressing. And that's because they had the appropriate race. And then he has this chart over here, the breakdown from the 1860s to the 1960s.
Yes.
So he says that Black people were enslaved 99% during the 1860s. Illiteracy was 98%. The wealth owned by Blacks was half of 1%. Business income less than 1%. By 1896, the Blacks in slavery 96%. Illiteracy rate dropped tremendously to 40%. Wealth still at 0.5%.
Mm.
Black second class by 1920s. So we were second class citizens, 100%. The literacy rate continued to drop, 25%. Wealth owned by Blacks, still 1/2 of 1%. Business income, less than 1%. Also, we moved to the 60s. We're still second class citizens. The literacy rate has improved. We still have no wealth. And if we were to look at this same chart for 2020, in essence, the literacy rate is still lower, a little bit lower, and the wealth is still at 0.5%.
Right.
Mhm.
So basically he's saying, you know, there's practically no relationship between Black people's level of wealth and income
None.
and their level of educational achievements.
None.
So we have all this education, but we don't have any wealth.
Nothing.
Yeah, we don't have any wealth, we don't have any power, but we walk around and we pride ourselves in being extremely educated, but what do we own and control?
What
Nothing.
can we do with this so-called education if it's really education, which really is miseducation? Because you can't be, say you go spend time in school, either a bachelor's, master's, and doctorate, and really, what could we really show for it? What could I build that I could deal with some wealth with this, you know? I'm not saying people go all the way get it, but so we have to really start think and analyze this really critically, you know? Because nothing has changed for people in this country, especially Black, for almost over a century now. All this, and now they said we're gonna be what in the next 40 years the underclass thing, the permanent underclass, nothing.
We're underclass now, brother.
We're already there now.
We're already there, brother. I know.
So they're talking about project. No, you there now.
Right.
Yeah,
we're already there, brother. And look at the end, in closing in this section, at the end, he says that wealth and other inequalities continue primarily because the planned inferior education provided to Blacks was never designed to give them countervailing power to offset the racism to which they would be exposed in mainstream society. That's a fact. So that he moves on to the next section. Education is not enough. He says that education is not enough. He says that education is an empowerment tool only when it is used in the right sequence. In a capitalistic democracy, however, economic achievement and mobility must occur before a group attempts to open up channels of educational opportunities. So basically, family, he's saying that we gotta control the economics first, right? We gotta get economics in, we gotta get our economics in order first, and first before education. You get what I'm saying? That should really be the sequence. So we should be turning our residential neighborhoods into functional communities, right? Economic engines. So now we have money, and because we have the money, now we can channel that right into educational opportunities. So that's what he means. He's saying now we live in a capitalistic democracy. So he says, economic achievement and mobility must occur before a group attempts to open up channels of educational opportunities. And when he said that, I don't know if the panel ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. Okay. At the bottom of the pyramid, matter of fact, let me pull it up.
Yeah, let me switch the order. I should be able to see it on here on Zoom. I'm
gonna put it up. I'm getting ready to share my screen now.
Okay. As we wait, please like the video, share this while y'all watching.
Yes, like the video,
like the video. I know there's more y'all watching. Y'all don't want to like the video. Don't be hating. Like this video. You'll learn.
Yeah, let me share my little screen. Let me know, panel, if you see my screen.
All right, I'm gonna check now. I was going to check. Yep, it's popping up now. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, so Maslow's hierarchy of needs explained. At the bottom, so you see at the top of the pyramid, you have self-actualization. But at the bottom of the pyramid, we have physiological needs, right? Air, water, food, shelter, sleeping, clothing, and reproduction. Then we move up to safety needs. So personal security, employment, research, health, property. Then we go up a little further to belonging, love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, family, a sense of connection. Next, esteem. And at the apex of the pyramid, we have self-actualization. So I completely agree with Dr. Claud Anderson that, you know, economic achievement and mobility have to occur before, you know, we open up channels to educational opportunities, because, you know, you can't expect kids or anybody to be able to function without food, clothing, and shelter, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't, people can't function unless their physiological needs are met first. So he's saying, let's get the economics down, and then he said, open up channels of, educational opportunities. So when he said that, I immediately thought about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Does anyone on the panel want to add to that, or?
You know what I'm thinking about when you say this? I'm thinking about the contrast between Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. Do we go for civil rights and all of these abstract rights, or do we, you arguing what Booker T. Washington was pushing forward first is a self-actualization, meaning self-preservation, building a base in which food, clothing, and shelter would be established. That's his very argument. That was his very argument. He didn't dismiss, higher education and other facets of education, but you got to realize he was coming out of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the immediate need if you off your plantation and you no longer are fed, the little scraps that you got on that plantation? What is your immediate need?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm thinking of. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I like that. And what did the W.E.B. Du Bois argue? So the Booker T, you say we're arguing basically what you're saying, but so W.E.B. the counter argument was what? Can you expound on that, please?
Okay, his counter argument was is that they thought he was too silent on civil rights. That was Du Bois's argument. He thought, a lot of people thought that, well, of course, Booker T. Washington was silent on lynching, silent on voting, and getting the right to vote. A lot of the political climate that has to do with and he wasn't dismissing civil rights, but his argument is that Du Bois' argument is that what he's getting from white people is he's compromising too much, and so his argument was more so for getting a job and more so integrating into the system with higher education. He didn't have at that particular time. Well, W. Du Bois lived a long time, so his ideologies changed. But early on, he was more so, the Niagara movement. He come out of the Niagara movement that later became the NAACP. That ideology, the civil rights ideology, because the Niagara movement became evolved into the NAACP. So that particular philosophy.
Okay, so that was okay. And there was a book, you were telling me about it, Shamsi, a while ago, The Negro Problem.
Right. He lays out
voice.
Booker T. Washington.
Yeah,
Booker T. Washington. Yeah. Well, the board contrasted that. They both were going together. They were contrasting their ideologies.
So they wrote. You said they wrote that book together.
Yeah, they wrote that together, and at that particular time, I don't use that argument with Du Bois. He was developing that time. He was into that talented.
Can when the book was released?
Oh man, that was early 19.
Was it around 1915 or 1917?
Let me get that. I got the book here.
And the reason why I mention is because people noticed that Booker T got killed back in 1915. So I'm not sure if that was after he was around or when he was transitioning.
Well, he was still alive then when the Negro Problem was written, because they wrote that book together, the Negro Problem. So he was still alive here. He died in 1915, 1916. Garvey had came to the United States to
the next year. He came next year.
Yeah. He wrote that book in 1875. They wrote that together. That's in 1881 they founded the Forerunners of Tuskegee.
All right.
Let's see here. I'm getting the copyright.
I'm gonna double check. Bio. But anyway, let's continue with the reading.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So the bottom. I'm at the bottom of page 95. It says, "Who are schools failing?" And he starts off by saying one of the most frequently heard complaints in the closing years of the 20th century was that schools were failing. If public schools are failing, then why are failing? It says then they are failing only whites, Asian, Hispanics. I'm sorry. If public schools are failing, they are failing only whites, Asians, Hispanics, and other ethnic immigrants. Schools do not now, nor did they ever fail and what they were designed to do for Black children: create a labor class in service to white society. Schools have always been mirrors that reflect the values, goals, needs, and priorities of the society and the communities they serve. They have remained almost exclusively controlled by whites through government policymakers, boards of education, and major corporations. He says that these powerful bodies approve curricula, staffing, and instructional materials, regardless of their physical location, racial, or ethnic makeup. Schools across America had to teach their children European American values. The quality of teaching and the educational outcomes track the racial lines of power and wealth. The academic scores of elementary and secondary schools strongly correlate with parental income, wealth, and education. High-income students can more easily afford special coaching from parents, professional remedial help in private schools. Schools perpetuate wealth and racial advantages that are intergenerational in nature. That's a fact. Lastly, he says schools produce in their students whatever skills, attitudes, or other characteristics public policy makers and business owners need in their present and future workforce. That's a fact, that schools are driven by politics and economics.
Mm-hmm.
And when he said that, I thought about how they are integrating LBGT stuff into the curriculum. And I remember having a conversation with a brother on Facebook, and I said, man, when you want to normalize a behavior, 3 things had to happen. First, you had to legalize it. Then you had to promote it in the media, and then you had to push it through the school system. So I'm gonna say it again. Whenever you want to normalize a behavior, first you legalize it. Secondly, you promote it in the media, and then you push it in the school system. Because again, the school systems will inculcate its students, like he says, with whatever skills, values, attitudes, or characteristics that public policy makers and business owners need. I thought about the LBGT history that is now being integrated into school curriculum. I thought about even at Morgan, how a lot of tech companies are asking for our students to know certain things like Python and cybersecurity things. And so they came to us and said, look, your students have to learn Python. So now Python is a part of the curriculum. You know what I mean? So basically politics and economics definitely drive what our children learn in school. Does anyone else want to add?
I want to add one important thing. Good for you to mention that, because you are a professor yourself. And I noticed that, they teach these things now in our schools now for a lot of children, but I'm saying, look how behind we are, especially our children with these things that's already was to come already. Python. You know how many people that are making billions of dollars that knows coding, that's making already in our children now just getting to learn this?
Absolutely.
So, and I tell people many times, this is you live in a competitive world. And these people, if you don't trust your survival, like Amos would have said, you might also start digging up and put yourself 6 feet under. Most of the ones that we indulge, the computers, these apps, these were all developed by non-Black people that already knew this decades in advance. And I'm so pissed. Right now, I'm on Facebook, Dr. Maat. I'm seeing so much promotion of cybersecurity, this Python stuff. Now, I did not see this 5, 6, 7 years ago.
It's because that's what they're pushing now.
That's what they're pushing now. So by the time they push something, it's already they're already moving on to the next one.
Oh yeah.
I have a degree in cybersecurity. I knew about it, and I've had my degree for over 5 years. Cybersecurity is maybe it's just in Detroit, but cybersecurity was pushed in the high schools here. It came out of Cisco. We had Cisco academies that were already in the high schools here, and a lot of the students here in Detroit are off into Cisco and also Python. Python is being pushed into IT, not just cybersecurity, but also people with Cisco degrees now are pushing it for automation with Python. I learned Python, but here in Detroit, I have to say they had Cisco academies that were quite popular here in Detroit. I got into it was called Focus Hope here in Detroit, where I initially got aware of IT, and I later went. That's the path I went into, to cybersecurity. I have my degree in cybersecurity, also know Python. But all over Detroit, we had Cisco Academy, and our students were getting into that.
Yeah, but that just goes to show you that it's the job market that drives what type of education or the skills that they're teaching in the school system.
Exactly. And that's the danger. A lot of people don't understand. If they're pushing something that lets you have to get, that means they're already onto something much bigger and better. And I tell people, say how much we're so behind. That say we don't want no market start driving where you have to be. Because if they drive, that means they control your destiny, because you're going to follow the trend.
Yeah.
But computers were a hot commodity. I go all the way back in the computers in the when it was a 286 and a 386, when you didn't even have a math code processor on the computer. Computers was a hot thing in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people jumped. Then you had the big techno market came out of the 80s, early 80s, and went into the 90s. That's where Microsoft was nothing but an application. DOS was the operating system. You might remember that, Dr. Maat.
Yes, when you started talking about it, my mind went to IBM.
Yep, DOS. The operating system was DOS. The operating system, the Microsoft, was an application 3.11. It was, later on went into, when you got into, they hit it real well in Windows 95. DOS was still the major base in Windows 95, but then later in 98, we started getting into that being the core of the application in 98. But yeah, for a year, I guess Detroit, I had to get it there, give it up there. There in Detroit, we was on that computer technology here. We was up on that here.
Beautiful.
What page are we on?
Yeah, we're on page 97, Queen. Education reform, number 1, halt school integration. Go ahead and build on that one, Queen.
I like this right here, because I remember, I feel like it was last week, and we were talking, and we were saying that we were talking about integration, and we were saying like why I guess we weren't fully understanding why it is that they were pushing integration so hard. But I kind of like this clarification here. And he says that we're talking about the integration of the schools. And he says that first, the original intent of the county lawsuit in 1953 was for parity in the allocation of education funding under a separate but equal public policy. Blacks wanted to stop the local board of education from giving white schools 4 times as much money as they allocated to Black schools. Blacks were more concerned about the equal than the separate. So I thought that was interesting. But the way the U.S. did was they flipped it. And he said, second, the U.S. Supreme Court Brown v. Board of Education ruling that segregated schools were inherently inferior and unequal. They said it was wrong. So they are unequal when they are unequally supported. Instead of integrating and busing Black students into white schools, the Supreme Court should have ordered the Board of Education to simply bust over much more money, which is in essence what we were talking about last week. You know what I mean? Like the issue was fairness in the allocation of funds, then just allocate more money. Like we shouldn't have to merge together in order to, but that was just their way of making sure that we didn't get as much money as the white students did. He said the third research studies conducted in Norfolk VA in 55 and other districts revealed that Black children are not performing significantly better in integrated schools than they were in all Black schools, as history has already proven, and so have other studies proven that when we teach our own children, they tend to learn better and they do better. Fourth, integration made Black people guests in America. Of course, we know that we were good on our own, and once we wanted to join in, we became the bottom of the bottom class, even though we were already the bottom. And he talks about the Supreme Court case in 1991, and he said that's when it was ruled that school districts could halt integration efforts. So thus, for the first time in history, Black Americans are free to return to local control and fashion their own education plan and policies. So what he's saying is that, like, which he gets on to say that we can use some of these laws to our benefit. So he's saying that even though first they kind of forced integration upon us, by 91, in essence, it was kind of changed to where if we wanted to use some of those rulings and wanted to go back and to actually be separate, we could.
Facts. All facts. All facts. So, yeah, go ahead, Shamsu.
I said that's deep.
Yeah. But I started laughing too, Queen, when he said they should have bussed over more funds.
Right.
Instead of busting over children to white schools.
Right. Just send the money over.
Right. Just send the daggone money over.
Exactly.
Cut that check, man. You know how black people
Right. Cut the checks.
You know, these people send you money and say, you owe us money. Why are you so scared to give away the money? So don't hold.
But black people should have fought harder for that, though. If they really, really simply want to, I think that's his interpretation. Because personally, I think if they really simply only wanted the fairness of the allocation of funds, then it seems like they would have fought harder to stay where they were. Because it's almost like as soon as the decision was made, okay, well, all right, we're going to school with y'all now. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, you might be right.
That's not my interpretation of history. It seemed like to me like they wanted to go to school with them.
Yeah.
It was more than just them wanting money.
Yeah, they wanted fully social integration, like you said.
Integration,
exactly.
They didn't just want the money; they wanted to be sitting there hand in hand.
Right.
Yeah,
and it goes back to the mental illness that was already instilled in our people for centuries. That's why I tell you many times when they do these things to our people and they make these chess moves, our people gonna fall into because. What, somebody say something?
Mm-mm.
When they make these chess moves, like say Jim Crow, then eventually say we're going to integrate you, our people are going to be up in arms and say, yay, because they have a pathology to say, I want to be just like you. Everything. Hell, I want my genetics to be just like you. Go as far as let me just integrate by marrying into you. That's how sickness it goes.
Yeah, you used the perfect word. You said this pathology, the psychopathologies that are prevalent in America. And if you guys want to know more about the psychopathology that exists in the African and in America, please check out our conversations on the African Personality in America by Dr. Kobe Kambon. He breaks that down beautifully. I think the panel did a wonderful job having those discussions. But if you want to understand the psychopathologies that exist, yeah, check that out. And also, Dr. Amos Wilson I keep saying,
you mean something about the education? I know you're talking about the book.
The Vocation of African Consciousness?
No, I was getting ready to introduce another book that they can read. It's called Self-Hatred and Self-Defeat. It's a new book out that Baba Sababu put out called Self-Hatred and Self-Defeat. I grabbed it. Actually, Sababu, Baba sent it to me about 2 weeks ago. And what he did was he gathered Dr. Amos Wilson's lectures on self-hate and self-defeat, and he put he composed the book with those lectures and also some unpublished written notes by Dr. Amos Wilson, and he put it in a book. So I think that in order to understand this stuff.
Let me look that up now as y'all talk, because
it's not on Amazon yet.
The last book I got was Black and White, and that was a lecture that leads into that helps add on to the remedies for children, that adolescents. It's like beginning pages of what falls into leading to the remedies, how you remedy this problem with the children. That was the purpose of Self-Hate in Black and White.
Yeah, I have the book. I haven't read it yet, but I do have the book. But
it's a short read, Dr. Ma. I mean, if you go through the first 7 pages, it'll just tie into the book itself.
Okay, but cool. Let's move on because we have like 7 or more 8 points we want to make, and we don't want to hold people long. Education reform number 2. It says control public and independent schools. He says that since 1977, the U.S. Supreme Court has issued a number of rulings that Blacks can now use to regain control of public and private schools within communities that serve their children. What I didn't quite like is that, and maybe it would have made the book a little longer, but I would have loved for him to at least reference or name or list some of that legislation that passed, but I guess we would have to do our legwork to check it out. But anyway, he's saying that we can use this legislation to regain control over public and private schools within our communities. He goes on to say that control must begin by using Supreme Court decisions and to also gain control of the money that supports the schools. He says that all states assign substantial powers to local school boards. The bulk of school funding comes from local communities and not from the federal and state government. Since Black communities pay taxes, they must have the greatest say in how their schools operate. Like white communities, they should control their schools. Otherwise, there is reason to question whether Blacks should collectively withhold payment of those taxes that support a school system that they cannot locally control. So he's basically saying, look, family, you pay taxes, so you should have a say in how these institutions run, right? Your tax money is being used to operate these schools, so you should have a say so in them. And he's saying if you don't, then you need to withhold the payment of those taxes that support the school system, right? If you cannot control these school systems locally. But Sister Alima and I were talking offline, and we were wondering, well, how do you do that? Like, how do you say, well, I'm not going to put in? Because this stuff comes out of, I know for me, it comes out of your paycheck, your state taxes, your federal taxes. So how do you say, well, you know what? I want to take this portion and I want to withhold this portion from the school system because you all aren't doing what we want you to do. So that's a question that we had. Brother Shamsu, you got any suggestions? Because he didn't talk about that. Like, how do you do that? How do you withhold that money?
If you're working for somebody else, the government automatic, by law have to withhold that kind of money.
Exactly.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I didn't quite understand.
I didn't get that either.
You know, but my thought was just to get more involved, like on, you know, with the PTA and sitting on boards and just being an active parent in the school. Because a lot of people complain about the school system, but how many people are active? You know, how many people go to the PTA meetings? How many people sit on the boards? How many people go up to the, you know, the principal and have, like, we got to get more active and more engaged in the public school system.
I just think it's a dead system, and people are you know, as the public school system is just a dead system. You know, people are not gravitating to it because it's just a routine now. It doesn't really, it doesn't grab the consciousness of the people. Now, education is very important. I'm not knocking education. I have 2 degrees, so of course I'm not knocking education, but how the system is laid out to the masses of the people is just a dead system.
I agree.
Yeah. So you basically saying that people just kind of checked out.
Yeah, they kind of checked out.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm just going to make it through. It's just something. When I was in high school, I was the same way. It's just some shit I got to get through so I can leave.
Right.
That was my attitude.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a disconnect. Yeah. Like it's definitely a disconnect.
I was disconnected. I really was. I was disconnected.
But now, people have to fix that though. You know what I'm saying? Still have to work to fix it, because at the end of the day, most people have to work and they can't afford to teach their own children. That's the reality that we all will have to come to. Black children, for the most part, are going to always go to public school in some form or fashion. So that can't be an excuse to where, you know, it just is what it is. You know, I mean, I get that. Don't get me wrong, but Black people still have to be more engaged, like Dr. Maat said, because it's going to always be the same mundane shit if no one does anything about it.
Yeah.
One thing I want to say, ladies, and I remember another brother said this on another stream, that and much times Black people feel say homeschooling is good. I agree, but because there's so many million of us, not everyone is going to homeschool our children. So we have to engage in these school systems that we put our children in. There's no excuse. You can't be lazy, you know, especially if you're going to give your children to these people, you know. And when they see a lot of us not engaged enough, what they're going to exploit our children more badly.
No doubt.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, Doctor, I did try to put the link of the book you talking about for Amos, but I forgot I'm not moderated, so I can't delete it.
It's fine, brother. It's fine, brother Chaos. I'll send it out or put it in the chat. I know brother Shinsu said that it's not on Amazon as of yet. And before we close out, I'll go upstairs and grab my book and give that information out. So if people want to get that new book, they'll know where to get it. So moving on to point 3, education reform number 3, cooperative and group learning versus individualism. So he says that public and private schools based on the Powernomics plan must teach children to work and learn cooperatively as members of a team. White society credits Anglo-Saxon rugged individualism, with development of this nation. Accordingly, they place great importance on educational programs that teach children to compete against each other. Individualism in schools is a form of educational Darwinism, or survival of the fittest and brightest. That's true. It is a form of selfishness that encourages a child to be self-centered, to outdo and profit at the expense of another child. This is the same ideology that drives this nation's political and economic systems, from which Black people have systematically been excluded. If Black children are going to successfully compete, they will have to experience countervailing education practices that play to the strengths of Black people as a community. I wholeheartedly agree. So he's saying that in school, we need to teach our children to instill within them a strong communal spirit and developing effective cooperative skills. So he's saying that all of that stuff starts in the school system. So, having a communal mindset. And I remember, I think when we were discussing chapter 1 or chapter 2, we were talking about group consciousness. And I remember someone said, well, how do we cultivate group consciousness? And I said, well, we would have to control the institutions that condition the mind. And to me, that would be education and also the media. So if you want to change or shape consciousness, then you got to control the institutions that mold and shape the consciousness of the people. And one of those institutions would be the educational system. And he's saying that within the educational system, that's when we instill a strong sense of community and developing, effective cooperative skills. So it all starts. Go ahead, Shamsu.
What do you think of Dr. Boyce Watkins' program? Are you familiar with him?
I'm familiar with Dr. Boyce Watkins' program, and I know that his whole movement is centered on economics, but I don't know the specifics of his program. No.
Okay.
What are your thoughts about it?
Well, he's more so of the immediate family, not really the collective. He's about the immediate family building a investment portfolio. I don't hear a lot of, he talked. His agenda is the immediate family and the children having a strong investment portfolio.
Well, that's where it starts, though.
You mean with the stock market? Yeah, I mean that's a nice start. But go ahead. I'm listening.
So my question is that how are we expected? I mean, will they change? So when you get a strong portfolio, now no, I'm not against that. Yes, you do need a strong portfolio. None of that what he's talking about. So how do we expect the kids if we don't start them off and having a good investment portfolio, but not working together? You just caught up into building your stock portfolio. We do that now. Right. We go to college and we do that now. We're about getting consuming resources, but as a collective whole, as a Pan-African, what we're really talking about, what Dr. Claud Anderson is talking about is really a Pan-Africanist agenda of group power, not just your immediate family. He seems to be dealing with people as a nation. He talks about that in the first chapter. He's not talking about individual achievement and you going to this particular institution. He talks about that in the first chapter. Mm-hmm. He's talking about people getting involved in group power. So, is it an individualistic? Can we successfully have a kid, we raise them from childhood all the way up to adulthood to have a strong investment portfolio and be about stock, which is a good thing, not a negative thing, but right. Not a real program of Pan-Africanism, as what Dr. Claud Anderson is really dealing with.
Yeah,
is group power.
It's group power. It's groupinism. Yeah. That's what we call it, groupism.
Right. Will they do that?
Right. Will they do it? You're saying if you're not, I guess inculcating them with a Pan-African mindset. Right. Yeah.
At a young age. I mean, right. we went to college and that was my parents taught that, a strong portfolio, a good education, marry a good woman, you know what I mean, and live happily ever after. I was taught that, and my friends that too. They're just as individualistic and materialist as they want to be.
Yep. And so look, moving on, he says, teaching children to live as individuals is a philosophical design that works best for white children. He says that they can afford to be individuals because they are the majority.
Right.
And everything
Right.
in society is designed to support and accommodate the white majority.
They
It
got
is
the system.
minority groups that are hurt by the concept of individualism in a society in which wealth and power follow the numbers. Okay. And then he goes to the bottom. He says, years ago, a successful Jewish businessman told me that Jewish schools teach cooperative economics. I remember having this conversation on this panel, and someone says, how do you convince people to buy Black? How do we adopt that mindset? We have to teach it to our babies. It all starts with our babies. And it even says it that a Jewish businessman, he says, told me that Jewish schools teach cooperative economics. The young students are reportedly taught that whatever you want to buy in life, somewhere there's a Jewish person who makes it or sell it. So at a very young age, they're teaching their children about cooperative economics, okay? So he goes on to talk about that, and he says schools must teach groupism that supersedes class and income differences. I'm gonna say that again. Schools must teach groupism that supersedes class and income differences. So to know that we should be functioning as a group, not as an individual. A lot of us, like you said, Shamsu, we build up our portfolios and it's I. But we need to understand that if we haven't arrived, then none of us have arrived. And that's the mentality that we need to have, all or nothing. That's the mentality that we need to have.
Because look at Michael Jordan. Look, how is him being a billionaire? He has a hell of a portfolio.
Yes.
That's just obvious. But how does that impact his community where he's living?
Right. Oh no. Go, Sister Lima.
Huh?
Did you want to say something, Queen? I saw you unmuted your mic.
No.
Okay, cool. But you're right, Brother Shamsu. How does it? Like, I mean, people celebrated Jay-Z being a billionaire. I remember when it first came out that he was hip hop's first billionaire, and people were online, they were posting it, and I was sitting there thinking, how does Jay-Z's assets impact you? Like, I mean,
It's a good question.
You know how many people call me a hater for posing that exact same question? Like, why are you so excited about another person's wealth? What does that have to do with you?
Right.
That's actually kind of low-key weird. It's like your neighbor gets a new car and you're like, oh my God, we've got a new car. Like, that shit ain't yours.
You know,
That's right.
to tell you a little trick, ladies, I remember around here, there was a saying, I'm around like different cultural people, mostly people from the island. And I noticed when they said they get a new house, the next person that's from a different island will try to outdo the next person to get a bigger house. But when we see somebody, like say the celebrities got like the money and stuff, now says a great thing and say how they don't really question how this better collect myself. I'm gonna try to get to that. You know, it's like it stops there. It's like a different mindset here when you find that the Negro mind here in America is very interesting. I just don't get it.
But yeah, but in closing, on this particular point, he was saying that we gotta teach our children groupism, and that during those early years, right, of early formal socialization of Black children, we have to stress mutual respect, a sense of shared destiny, cultural values, even manners and courteous behavior, and build a sense of kinship. And he also talks about gangs, and he's saying that a lot of children gravitate towards gangs because they want to feel like they belong to a group. You know, especially children who grow up in dysfunctional families. They don't have that, they lack that sense of belonging. And so he's saying that in the schools, that the schools should definitely, cultivate an environment where the children feel like they are a part of a group, and that they can depend on a group. And so he talks about that. But he ends with saying that teachers, administrators, and ancillary staff need training in the new philosophies, methods, and how to revise content to achieve new group goals. So we need to adopt new philosophies, new methods, right, in order to achieve new group goals. All right, so moving on to point 4, education reform, retraining education teams. Sister Lima, go ahead and take this one.
Mm,
We're at page 104.
Okay, so he's saying that he's talking about instructional programs, and he said that they should teach the keys to the community building, a sense of community, trust, cooperation, group accountability, unity, group competitiveness, and academics, all in the context of Black heritage and local community goals. A communal philosophy should touch all aspects of the curriculum, defining how learning experiences are structured. Schools should establish a direct relationship between the learning experience and ways students could use the information to empower their community and promote unity. He's talking about a code of conduct. He said that the code of conduct teaches the child how to respect, appreciate, and value Black people so that those values will be a part of the adults that they become. And I thought that that was a key and something that we need to implement within all of us, especially adults. I feel that the adults, Black adults of today, need to know this more than the children, because we don't have any type of code amongst us whatsoever. I think we touched on this a little bit last week, where you might see people say stuff like, such and such said this and that, we're going to take their Black card. And I always joke, like, who the fuck issued the Black card? You know what I mean? It's got to be bankrupt. We don't have any money. I mean, so there's no money on the card. So what is Earth at the end of the day? Like, what does that really mean for someone to take your Black card? Like, who gives a fuck? Black people at the bottom of the bottom. Who cares about taking a card from a poor person? You know, so it's just those type of things where we act like we have some type of code when in actuality we have none whatsoever, because we don't have anything in writing. And if it's not in writing, it's just up smoke.
You know, it's funny, the Black card analogy is saying, you know, what are you take my card, you're gonna like swipe it, you think it's not gonna hit decline? I mean, oh man, I mean, we gotta be here. I mean, yeah.
So then it says, the principal function of the family is to protect young children. The family is the first economic and political entity to which Black children are exposed. Kindergarten and elementary schools are extensions of the home and function as a child's first formal external socialization process, which is very, very true. If they learn, and then he goes on to talk about different lessons that a community can give. And he says, if you learn these lessons in your youth, they will continue to function as a team as you get older, which is very true. You know, raise a kid up in the way in which you want them to be. All right. Page 106. He starts talking about community schools, and he goes in to explain what community schools can do. And he says the community schools can help parents develop parenting techniques that encourage and reward desired behavior in their children. Community schools bear the heavy responsibility of socializing children to be competitive students as well as functional adults. One of the primary objectives of community-based schools should be to prepare children for the real job market instead of requiring them to endure instructional programs that have no relevance on the real world. And he says that early communal experiences, especially in elementary, they lay the foundation for children to learn the academic and vocational skills that they will learn in secondary school. And he says that if Black Americans are going to ever have self-sufficient and competitive communities and acquire behavior patterns, our schools must, in and themselves, become communities. It will be teachers, administrators, and other staff who will find ways to impart these critical new values and accept the challenge of these new roles. But in essence, he's saying that our schools also, if we're going to operate as a community within our communities and within our just in everyday interactions in schools in which we build, they also have to be communal, in a communal sense, which I agree with.
Absolutely. And I think that going back to what he said, that we, you know, that the information that they learn inside the classroom has to be relevant to the real world. And I think that's why so many of our children are just uninterested, because they're like, well, how can I apply this? I even hear it at Morgan. They'll say that's what they want. So when you stand in front of these students and you give them information, the first thing that comes out of their mouths, and I love it, they're like, how can I apply this? What can I use this for? You know what I mean? And I think that
that's a sharp student, whoever that is.
Yeah, what do you say, Brother Shamsu?
That's a very sharp student, whoever asks that question.
Oh yeah, they ask it a whole lot. They ask it a whole lot at Morgan. When I teach them like an engineering concept, after I show it to them, the first thing they say is, okay, well, Doc, how can I apply this? You know, what can I do with this? And so I'm just thinking about, like, even when I was in high school, just wondering, like, you know, I checked out a lot of times because I didn't feel like the information I was learning was relevant to what was happening outside. And I think that that's what happens with a lot of our students. I mean, a lot of our children, they just become uninterested. That's why I wasn't surprised when he said that 40% of Black children who start first grade drop out before completing high school, you know, and many of them spend most of their lives on unemployment, welfare, and on prison rolls. But anyway, moving on. Education reform 5, compensatory education in alternative schools. So in this particular section, he's advocating for vocational education. He says that Black America should design and operate full-scale, intellectually demanding apprenticeship and vocational education programs in targeted urban schools across America. These targeted schools should blend academic and job skill options by combining inside and outside of class apprenticeship experiences and training with basic subject mastery in the classroom. The program give our Black students an optional way of learning a living in a life. And as you said, Sister Alima, offline, when you and I were talking about this, they're already doing this.
Yes.
I know in Baltimore, we have a school called Carver Vocational High School. And they teach students, you have wood shop, you have carpentry, you have home economics, you have mechanics. So they teach the guys, a lot of girls don't take it, but you know, you can how to fix cars. So I guess that's called, you know, mechanics or whatever it's called, but they have vocational schools right here in Baltimore City. And I'm sure they have it in a lot of other urban communities as well.
But why did they take a lot of those programs out of the schools though? Like when we was coming up, did y'all have like home economics?
Yes.
And like auto shop, and you know what I'm saying? Like just teach you the basics, how to change a tire, how to put a button on, like simple stuff that kids today, they don't have that in school anymore, unless you go to a particular school, but overall they don't have that.
Yeah, unless you go to a vocational school. Yeah.
Or high school, trade high school, most likely.
Yeah, but a regular high school, they don't feel that it's necessary.
So
but they'll put your kid in Spanish. What the fuck did it like? I'm not trying to be disrespectful or I'm not trying to insult anyone, you know, but I just don't understand this pressing need for kids to learn Spanish. Who are they going to talk to in Spanish? America it just goes further to show how they focus on things that are not important. Like they're not going to talk to anyone in Spanish. They're not going to ever use that.
You know, I never think of that now that I think of it, because I always thought normally they have that as a second or wherever language is for, because we have a large population of Hispanics that they keep importing. Maybe that's the reason. But when I think about it, who really that's going to learn it if they grasp it, going to really talk that?
They're really not to mention, like, let's be realistic. America might be a melting pot, but it's still very segregated. Spanish people and Mexicans and Hispanics and all of them, they don't hang with Black people. That's a bunch of bullshit. You know what I mean? So what would be the reason that we would need to learn that? I remember my father asked me yesterday, why are you speaking French? I was like, well, because we go to Africa and a lot of them speak French. He's like, why don't you learn to speak Spanish? I was like, what Spanish friend do you have, Dad? He's like, I don't know any of them. Exactly.
But you know, it goes back to the pathology of our parents, and I'm not blaming them, but it goes to say, why you want to learn some Black stuff?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, brother.
You get away with that Black stuff. Stay away from that.
Brother Shamsi, let me ask you a question. When did you see these programs, the vocational programs, disappear? Because I'm an 80s baby, and you know, so when I went to high school, it was the 90s, and she's right. By that time, a lot of programs started dwindling. Like by the time we started getting out, you know, into the world, a lot of
major Black cities, those got cut because of major Black cities became broke. So what happened was that the major reason why, so they began to start cutting programs. The most important programs, you know, was the vocational programs. But like Detroit went broke. Many of your Black urban cities had mismanaged money. You know, it wasn't all, people make it seem like they just went broke, but funds were misappropriated. But the thing is that the cities went broke. So they began to cut the programs because of the cities didn't have money to finance them. Yeah, cities went broke. Most of your major Black cities are broke.
Mm.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say something about that once we conclude this reading.
Oh yeah, no, okay, once you conclude, okay. Well, moving on, education reform point number 6, using technology. And he says that, technological development, computer advances, the internet, high-speed data connections has rapidly changed the way we conduct most life activities. It is important that our children are exposed to and learn how to use the developing forms of technology so that they will have marketable business and employment opportunities in life. It goes
That pretty much sums up the whole section.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to read this one last line. He said it would be the role of Powernomics-based schools, however, to frame technology in the most appropriate ways for our goals as a tool to increase efficiency and information. So yeah, family, get your children involved in STEM. I had read a statistic a while ago that said that most of the degrees earned in the Black community are business. I want to say they said 80% of the degrees earned in the Black community are business degrees.
What's
With
with
nothing to
the
manage.
obsession with business
Business?
administration?
You
What is
serious?
the
Nothing to manage.
obsession with it? I don't get it.
Yeah, it's business. Yep.
I don't
Hold
get it.
I
on.
agree with the,
Can
I
I
agree
say,
with the Nation of Islam here. The Nation of Islam pushed farming, agriculture,
Right.
and that's what they push. I agree. But before we do anything, we got to be able to eat something.
Right.
can I say something? I did not know. That's something new. So now I asked the people that's in the chat room to say, all right, 80% of us, we get these degrees in business, but we have not created business for our own selves. Does this make sense? Does this really?
Those are management. Those are management. They don't teach entrepreneurship. They teach you how to maintain white people's businesses.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
But aside from that, though, the rise of Black entrepreneurship has been pretty big. But what we're not doing is that we're still on this individualistic thing.
Yes,
So you've got
Yeah.
15 Black girls that all know each other and they all sell jewelry. And instead of just putting that together and creating one jewelry business, they all
Right.
feel like they have to do their own thing. I think that's one of our biggest problems. I see so many people
They call
selling
it
soap,
capitalism.
so many people selling lotions, so many people selling waist beads, where if we could take and come in together and incorporate some of those things, those businesses could probably actually thrive. We don't need, it's too many, we have too many businesses of what we don't need. And I don't see many businesses of what we do need. Like, who makes washcloths? Who makes panties? Who makes socks? We don't make any of the actual essentials we need. We got so many people in business selling a bunch of bullshit, quite frankly. And I'm not trying to be mean, but how many t-shirt companies do we need? How many Black owned sneaker company? Like, fuck a sneaker. Like, I mean, I'm just saying, like, there's more things, in my opinion, that are necessities that will always be necessities that we should be manufacturing, and we don't touch those items at all.
No, we don't. We absolutely don't. I was even thinking of like dry cleaners, and in the community, like let's open up a dry cleaners. Everybody go get, we all go get our stuff dry cleaned. I know in Baltimore it's a thriving business. So I'm like, where our Black owned, where our little, mom and pop shops.
Yeah,
I'm so tired of
nowhere.
We have 4 soul food restaurants in one shopping center in Baltimore. Like, it's literally a little strip, maybe with like 8 or 10 stores, and we have 4 soul food restaurants
in one spot.
On one spot. Sister.
Why?
Exactly. Why?
Makes no sense.
Exactly.
Well, I could say one thing why they have it, because it's the only institution that Black people could say we can run and make some money. They're not thinking anything broader. And we know that Amazon, all these other corporations, they're trying to monopolize, centralize all in one. While we're still trying to sustain these old small little mom and pop shops, which really could be neutralized quickly. I'm just saying, continue.
Mm-hmm. Education reform point number 7, new role for Black colleges. So we coming down to the wire, family. We have just 2 more points. Okay, so education reform number 7, new role for Black colleges. He said, what, Queen?
Oh, no, you go ahead, sis. I didn't know if you were going to actually read it, because it's just, I don't know. I just, I was going to sum it up.
Yeah, I was going to sum it up.
Okay, yeah, because it's very repetitive.
Absolutely. And so he was just talking about how, it needs to be a new role for Black colleges, and how in the beginning, historical Black colleges were created to serve the Black community, and how HBCUs have strayed away that mission. And he's 100% right. Like our president, I'm at Morgan, and our president, his push now is diversity. And that's where the funding is. So if you can show that you have a diverse campus, you get more money from the state. And so Morgan used to be like 100%, African-American. And I think now we're down to like 76% African-American, 24%.
I got a lot of whites going there now.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of whites, a lot of Arabs go to Morgan. And so he's really pushing for diversity. So Dr. Claud Anderson is basically saying, look, HBCUs need to get back to their initial mission, which was to serve the Black community. So he talks about that, and he says that, integration, it killed us. He said that a lot of Black colleges closed once integration took place. There were several Black universities that were closed. And I'm gonna look that up because I didn't know that. But he said that several of them, once integration occurred, he said many Black colleges merged into white colleges and totally disappeared. And so now he's saying that once these colleges are integrated, that we had to share some of that funding. So initially there was funding set aside for Black colleges, but once they merged with white colleges now get some of that funding, okay? Especially if white colleges can show that they at least have like 20% Hispanic student enrollment, they get some of that federal government money, okay? Yeah. So,
it's kind of like how you just talking about how now Morgan has 20-something% other ethnicities and races, and they come in there on scholarships, because they're minorities, so to speak, because the school is full of Blacks. And so the whites can use that a minority scholarship to get in there. Don't have to pay.
Nope, don't have to pay us.
Ladies, it's interesting I mentioned that it's changing. Then some Obama did back a couple years ago, and regardless, say if he's going to say, if you want this money, you're going to have to start bring more of these other groups in these Black colleges, HBCUs, or you're not getting much funding. Remember the issue with that a couple years back?
I wasn't aware.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that, brother.
Because I know since before he departure, there was something that was brewing about these guys asking for more money, and it was an issue, even with Trump. But it was something that Obama set in place before these guys came up to Trump when he first started getting office. I think that first year, I believe. So that might have an effect why now you see enrollment of other non-Blacks coming into these HBCUs, because for them to get the money, they gotta start enrolling some of these people just to get funding.
Yeah, it's all about funding.
Because I'm thinking about, say, as much time Black people, we don't spend enough to keep our little Black business going. It makes me wonder how much of our students are supplying enough money to keep these schools running now. Because inflation goes up and tuition keep going up every year. And if a lot of Black people don't see the necessity going to these Black schools, now they gotta say, it's gonna be put pressure on them, say, I gotta look at the funding, so I have to start yield now to this. But
that's what's go ahead, brother. That's what's puzzling me about how does a man like Booker T. Washington with half the money, less education, people had less education, they had agriculture, they had plumbing, they had all facets of carpentry, tailoring, making suits, cooks that the military took most of the cooks, they couldn't even graduate them before the military took all of the cooks out of Tuskegee. Look at the level of skill that they were able to produce. It seems like they had more sense than we have now. I don't know what it is. But how do you produce that kind of, most of that school was built by the students.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
They built the school. All of those buildings that you see on Tuskegee, the early buildings was built by the students. Only thing that was on that land was a dilapidated church, and they said it was so raggedy and had holes going through it. They had a guy holding an umbrella while Booker T. Washington would teach the classes. Now, how does a man like that evolve and build something like that? And we got more people with more money, more education, more skill set, and do less.
Because they were hungry.
Okay.
It's just like they say people in the music industry, right? Like when they first come out, that's typically when they make the best music. And then after they've been out for a while and shit is getting good for them and they full now, and then their music starts becoming trash. It's the same concept with us. Like when it seems like when our backs were against the wall, when we had so much pressure against us, man, we created some diamonds. But it seems like as soon as that pressure wasn't on us anymore, we got extremely lax, we got extremely comfortable, and we just came, we just accepted just the very minimal. You know what I mean? And I don't know what it is about Black people, but we do work well under pressure.
Yo.
Look at the earlier Nation of Islam and look at the Nation of Islam today.
Correct.
Great point what you just said, sister.
Good
when
example.
They was against the war, in the 1930s, Nation of Islam building all the way up to Malcolm, and then look at it now.
Talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
That's it.
That's something to think about. So, what is to come now with us here? They're gonna try our people and say they're gonna put that's enough pressure. And a lot of these Negroes don't be pressure. If you notice
at all.
They didn't want to be no, that's how you do better. Matter of fact, you got shit done. I mean, you got stuff done.
True.
When you're pressure. So it seemed to me this beast's going to turn up on y'all to apply more pressure to get y'all to get some done. And much time people don't want to hear that, but look, if that's what he's going to do, he's going to do it.
Facts. But look, just to end this particular section, he talks about the doctrine of unequal exchange. And he said that the doctrine of unequal exchange is primarily practiced on Black people. He's saying that during integration, he said, we gave up our Black colleges, our brightest professors, students, and best athletes, clearly valuable assets in exchange for the social process of integration, which is not even a tangible asset. It has questionable value. I thought that was very powerful. And I know that the last time we met, I talked about Carr Beach and how we initially had a beach that was for Black people during the days of segregation, and how as soon as we were able to go to the white beaches, we abandoned that beach and it had to close down. So, we always give up our stuff, like he said, the doctrine of unequal exchange. We give up everything just to integrate or just to be with them. And like you said, Brother Chaos, that's a psychopathology that we have.
Yes, it is.
That's a psychopathology that exists.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So anyway, in conclusion, it says education reform number 8, adopt the Black school. So he's saying that, businesses, churches, he says that advisory boards and we need, social fraternities and sororities and civic organizations, all of us should at least adopt a Black school. And I started laughing at the first line. He was saying how across America you have billboards and road signs that urge us to adopt a highway or an endangered animal. And he's saying that we need to employ the same strategy when it comes to Black schools, that these different organizations, these Black organizations that exist, should all adopt the Black school and sit on boards and offer their expertise to these different schools. Does anyone want to add to that?
No, I'm good.
No, ma'am. Nope.
Good.
All right. Does anyone have any closing remarks?
Well, my closing.
I agree with everything that Baba said in the chapter, and we definitely have to have more of a communal mindset in order to get things done. I'm not really sure how we would get there, but as we already discussed, just starting in small groups, I suppose, and hope that it influences the masses. But another good chapter.
Absolutely.
My thing in regards to this chapter, yes, we had to be community mind, but it's going to take that pressure for a lot of people to start saying, we're going to have to probably do something, because when we relax, this is what I've started noticing with the relaxness with the Negro, or Black people, is that we don't like to get stuff done enough as collective. But when there's really applied pressure, now you I need to find someone here we need to come together to do something. So it seems to me you don't operate well when you relax. Maybe the beast has to turn up to get you to start think as a communal collective. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say that just to put fear in people, but it seems that that's what has to be, because we're too relaxed as people.
Oh, very. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Are you saying anything different that Dr. Amos Wilson didn't cover?
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. And Sister Alima and I, we call each other like before the discussion, and we say, I mean, he hasn't said anything different from Dr. Amos Wilson. It just feels like we're having the same conversation we had.
Like we're doing a summary.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It feels like a summary of Blueprint for Black Power. And even chapter 5, he wrote a chapter on practicing group economics. So like you said, this is something that we've already discussed on this platform, but we'll go ahead and knock it out. We're combing through, we're almost halfway through Powernomics. Thank you so much, family, for joining in. Please join us next week at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right on this channel. I know Sister Aleem and I keep saying that we're going to download these discussions and start an actual resurgence on the African Mind Book Club YouTube channel and post them on there. So we're in the process of doing that, family. But for now, we're going to go ahead and rock out on this channel. I will see you guys here next week. Have a peaceful and productive week. Peace and Black Power.
Peace, family.
Good night, Black people.